Hello everyone, is Bringonthechaos Glizzy for another What If a UN assassin has been killed and he'd been transported in the Naruto universe. What will happen to our heroes? They're going to destroy or save this world filled with hate and pain.
Chapter 10. Swish. The moment Sensei said start, the three of us jumped into a triangle entrapment formation with Sensei in the middle. Yamato's eyelid raised up in surprise. Instead of concealing themselves, they went straight for a battle formation. The first step when on a mission is usually being able to conceal yourself. Either they forgot or they're overly confident. Yamato was surprised once more by our next action. Haku held 3 senbon needles in his left hand and 3 in his right and threw them in a large arc towards Sensei. I performed a similar feat, throwing 6 shuriken in a wide arc towards Sensei. Yamato exclaimed in surprise. This will cut off my escape route. Leaves me with only 3 options. Jump in the air to dodge, leaving me vulnerable, hide underground, or run straight ahead towards Kimimaro. Yamato then looked straight on and dashed quickly towards Kimimaro. To his surprise, Kimimaro also chose this moment to dash towards him. He's planning to fight me in close quarters, Yamato thought. While Yamato and Kimimaro dashed towards each other, the senbon needles and shuriken collided into one another. Haku threw out 2 more senbon needles while I threw out 2 more shuriken. Kimimaro punched with his right fist only for Yamato to block it with his left hand. Yamato threw a right hook while Kimimaro ducked and pushed out with a palm strike to Yamato's groin area. Yamato jumped back while Kimimaro gave chase. They exchanged a few dozens more moves before Yamato threw out a left straight punch only for it to be caught by Kimimaro in a tight hold. Yamato exclaimed, why did he choose this moment to hold onto my arm so tightly? It'll leave him vulnerable for my next attack. At this moment, Yamato felt a sense of danger behind him. He quickly used his free hand to disarm Kimimaro's grapple and kicked upwards, forcing Kimimaro to jump to the side as he jumped to his left. Just as Yamato dodged to his left, 2 senbon needles and 2 shuriken flew past the spot he was just at. Before he could process what had happened, Haku dashed over with a flying back kick towards Yamato's head. Just as he ducked to dodge Haku's attack, he heard Kimimaro say, Earth-style bottomless swamp jutsu. Crap! Yamato exclaimed. Although he successfully dodged Haku's flying kick attack, his feet were stuck and he was quickly sinking down into a mud swamp. I quickly used this opportunity and threw a shuriken at Sensei, then said, Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. 1 shuriken quickly became 10. Alarmed, Yamato quickly said, Wood-style wood wall jutsu. A large wooden wall appeared just in time to block the barrage of shuriken. He then formed a hand seal and said, Wood-style wood vine jutsu. A large branch of wood grew out from the wooden wall and pulled Yamato out of the sinking mud. Haku finally landed at this moment from his earlier sneak attack and took a senbon needle out, throwing it towards Yamato, which hit him in the neck, but a second later it turned into a log. Yamato stood hidden on a tree branch nearby with cold sweat dripping down his head as he stared at the spot he was just at. Luckily, I used the substitution jutsu just in time. Damn you, Kakashi-senpai, what the heck have you gotten me into? These 3 kids are better than I thought. The moment Sensei disappeared, I sensed his location in a treetop nearby. I took out a shuriken and threw it in that direction as I shouted to Haku and Kimimaro, over there. Hey! He found me, Yamato exclaimed mentally. He suddenly recalled that in the profile he read, this one named Izaya was a sensory-type ninja. He quickly took out his own kunai and jumped out of the tree, expertly deflecting the shuriken. At this moment, Haku also threw out a senbon needle at Yamato, who responded by throwing out his kunai in his hand to block it. Let's see what else you guys got, Yamato said. He formed a few hand signs and said, Wood-style wood cage lock jutsu. The moment I sensed Sensei gathering chakra, I jumped as quickly as I could off to my right side. Soon after, a wooden cage appeared where I was standing, only to capture nothing. Haku had also noticed something amiss and with his speed and agility, quickly jumped up in the air and did a backflip out of the wooden cage's grasp. However, Kimimaro remained ensnared by the cage. At this moment I dashed towards Yamato-sensei with 2 kunai in my hands and engaged in close-quarter combat with him. Haku took this opportunity to reach Kimimura's cage and weaved a few hand signs before saying, "Wind-style severing blade jutsu." Wind blades appeared on Haku's hand as he made a slicing motion, cutting out a hole for Kimimura to escape. "Are you alright, Maro?" Haku asked. I'm fine," he responded. Haku placed his hands together to form ox, snake, and ram and said, "Ninja art, Kirigaku no jutsu." He then expelled a large amount of mist from his mouth, allowing it to fill up the entire area. The moment I noticed Haku use this technique, I parried one of Sensei's attacks and jumped backwards towards Haku and Kimimura. "What? The hidden mist technique? So they can even do this?" Yamato said in surprise. "It's just one surprise after another," he thought. He mentally began processing the whole ordeal up to now. Is there really a need to continue with this exam? The purpose was to see if they have any teamwork, but they obviously have near-perfect teamwork already. Maybe I'll just use this exercise to probe out their abilities and see what skill level they're at. Yamato then smiled involuntarily. I didn't even notice until now, but my heart is racing. I'm excited to see what other surprises they'll bring me. Facing these three feels like I'm on one of my dangerous B-rank missions. I'm certain these three don't have as much chakra as Jonin level ninja, but they are definitely abnormal for Genin. Probably somewhere in the Chunin level chakra levels. Hehe, I've really picked up some excellent students. I'm gonna brag to Kakashi-senpai later. Hey. Yamato then noticed something amiss. Haku quickly and soundlessly appeared behind Yamato and stabbed at his neck area with a senbon needle. The needle then quickly sank into Yamato's neck, meeting its mark. Haku smiled at his success, only for him to notice something wrong. Before he could react, his hand was held down tightly by wood protruding from Yamato's body. Yamato's body then completely turned into wood. A wood clone. Haku exclaimed. That's right. Yamato said as his actual body stood in front. The wood clone proceeded to wrap itself around more and more of Haku's body, seeking to tightly bind him. Yamato inwardly exclaimed as well at Haku's prowess. He actually knows how to perform the silent killing movement and taijutsu technique of the hidden mist. He's a prodigy. If I wasn't extremely wary and cautious of these three kids and prepared that wood clone, I would have been paralyzed by his needle right now. It was at this moment that he noticed three shuriken flying towards him. Yamato grabbed a kunai and successfully blocked two of them and parried the last. As Yamato looked around to find the attacker, my hand stuck out from underneath him and gripped his ankles tightly, attempting to pull him into the ground with the headhunter jutsu. Hey! Yamato exclaimed in shock, this is the Earth-style headhunter jutsu. Before he could be pulled into the ground, he put his hands together, controlling his wood clone to grab him and kept me from forcing Yamato-sensei into the ground. He then formed another hand seal and said, wood-style wood vine jutsu. Before I could escape, two large branches of wood grabbed me by the arms and waist and pulled me up out of the ground in front of Yamato-sensei. Before Yamato could say anything, however, Haku shouted, Maro. Kimimura then formed a few hand seals and placed his hands on the ground, saying, Earth-style earthquake slam jutsu. The ground shook underneath Yamato, Haku, and I before tearing up and splitting Haku and I away from Yamato-sensei. I quickly applied chakra to my legs and kicked hard at the wooden vines holding me, breaking out of their grasp, while Haku applied chakra into his hands, forming a sharp scalpel, cutting himself free. We both jumped backwards as Yamato-sensei took out a scroll. He then unsealed the scroll and said, Unseal, wind-style whirlwind gale jutsu. A strong tornado flew out from the scroll, forcing the mist to dissipate, clearing up the field once again. It was at this moment that Haku and I both stood opposite each other with Yamato-sensei in the middle. At an incredible speed, I weaved the hand signs of snake, ram, monkey, boar, horse, and tiger and shouted, Fire-style flame bullet jutsu. At nearly the same time, Haku formed the hand seals of dragon, tiger, and hare and shouted, Water-style raging waves jutsu. I spewed out a mix of oil and flame as Haku spewed out a strong force of gushing water from his mouth. Yamato stood on the receiving end of both attacks with a look of incredulity and seriousness. He quickly formed the hand seals of rat, dog, and tiger and said, Wood-style wood-domed wall jutsu. Giant wooden pillars quickly appeared from beneath Yamato and sheltered him safely inside as the flame bullet and raging waves collided with the dome before also colliding with each other. As Yamato remained safely shielded inside the wooden dome, he was secretly shocked. Although he had expected them to be able to use jutsu of this scale, he was nonetheless still shocked when seeing it. In fact, more than anything, he was simply shocked at the speed in which both Izaya and Haku formed the seals for the techniques. Why did I have to say come at me with the intent to kill? He inwardly lamented. He felt the rumble of the dome as the waves and flames crashed against it. A few moments later and the rumbling stopped. It was at this moment Kimimaro placed his hand on the ground and shouted, "Earth-style mobile core jutsu." Yamato felt a rumble at his feet and felt something bad was happening. The earth suddenly pushed him upwards. This is bad, he thought. I'd get crushed on the ceiling of the wood dome. He quickly released the wood dome technique and jumped out from the top before getting crushed. The moment he appeared outside, he was surprised. Although he got rid of the mist from earlier with his wind scroll, the area around him was fogged up and impeded his vision due to the steam created from the flame bullet and raging waves that collided with each other earlier. Don't tell me those kids did that on purpose. If they did, then their teamwork is truly too scary. From the corner of his eye he noticed a faint movement of the steam parting ways. A shuriken came flying towards him, so he quickly took out a kunai from his ninja tool bag and threw it to deflect the shuriken. However, there was a second shuriken hiding in the shadow of the first one. What? It's the shadow shuriken jutsu! Yamato exclaimed. Just as the shuriken was about to pierce his chest, he needed chakra at that area and a wooden block appeared at that spot, stopping the shuriken. Phew, he breathed out a sigh of relief. I really can't let my guard down for a second against my precious students, he mentally remarked. Haku and I had already regrouped with Kimimaro at this point. I watched intently at Yamato-sensei silently nodding in appreciation. With my Sharingan and sensory skills I picked up a lot of Yamato-sensei's techniques. I'm not sure how successful I'll be at performing them, but nonetheless this is a great way to see how to use wood style in action. Sensei is truly a capable shinobi. He successfully blocked, deflected, or parried every one of our techniques despite our teamwork and carefully planned attacks. Haku said. MN. Kimimaro nodded. Not only that, but Sensei has only used his techniques to defend and hasn't really made a move to attack us. If he did, we wouldn't have had such an easy time coordinating our techniques. In fact, it's possible that one of us would have been defeated already. I nodded at both Haku and Kimimaro. Both of your analyses are correct. Yamato-sensei is truly formidable. I reckon he's one of the best jonin in the Leaf Village. The fact that he can use the long-lost wood style is already a testament to his prowess. Even if the three of us go all out, we still may end up losing. Although we've improved a lot over the years, we still don't have as much chakra as Sensei, plus, he hasn't truly engaged us in battle. I'm sure by now that Sensei has a sense of our teamwork and abilities, so let's make one last attempt and go for the bells. There's only one way we can be successful, and that means we're going to have to show some of our true skills. Okay, big brother, it sounds like you have a plan. What do you need us to do? Haku inquired. I took out a regular kunai with a red string on it. I'm going to mark this kunai with my Flying Thunder God seal. Kimimaro, you engage Yamato-sensei in a one-on-one taijutsu fight and lure him as close as you can towards the river. Haku, you get to the river and use the water dragon jutsu. Do you have enough chakra for it still? Haku nodded and said, I do. It's a powerful B-rank ninjutsu technique and will drain about a third of my chakra, but I still have enough chakra to use it. Good. Then when Yamato-sensei gets near the river, activate your jutsu and force him to where you see this kunai. I'll then use the Flying Thunder God jutsu to quickly and secretly appear by Sensei's side and steal the bells, and then we'll destroy them. Haku and Kimimaro nodded. Good, let's move out. I said. Although it seemed like they took a while to converse, this all happened while Yamato was attacked by the Shadow Shuriken, and by the time he had landed on the ground the steam from earlier finally dissipated. He then turned to see the three of us standing next to each other when Kimimaro suddenly dashed out towards him. Hey! Did they have a strategy meeting just now? He thought. He quickly engaged Kimimaro in hand-to-hand combat only to be inwardly surprised. Was this kid holding back earlier? All of a sudden his movements have become more fluid and he's applying the power of his attacks at just the right time, giving his strikes more impact. Right as he blocked a kick to his forehead, he noticed Haku by the river and became even more shocked at what Haku was doing than the prowess Kimimaro showed in Taijutsu. Haku stood atop the water and with his left hand with incredible speed he formed the hand seals of ox, monkey, rabbit, rat, boar, bird, ox, horse, bird, rat, tiger, dog, tiger, snake, ox, ram, snake, boar, ram, rat, dragon, and monkey. At the same time with his right hand he formed the hand seals of bird, dragon, bird, ox, horse, ram, tiger, snake, rat, monkey, rabbit, boar, dragon, ram, rat, ox, monkey, bird, dragon, rat, boar, and at the last hand seal he placed his hands together to form the seal of bird and shouted, water-style water dragon jutsu. In next to no time at all a giant vortex of surging water appeared beside Haku and merged together in the air forming a menacing-looking giant water dragon with glowing golden eyes. Yamato quickly jumped away from Kimimaro's reach, having a hard time grasping what he just witnessed. This kid has enough chakra for the water dragon jutsu. What's more astonishing is his hand sign weaving skills. Even he himself could not perform so many hand signs with one hand at that speed, yet this kid not only accomplished this feat, he did it at the same time as he formed hand signs with his other hand. The water dragon jutsu has a total of 44 hand signs. This kid performed half the hand signs with his left and half with his right to cut down the activation time of the jutsu. He didn't have any more time to think as the watery dragon began to make its move according to Haku's control. The kunai with the red string on it was off to the side near the forest's edge, so he controlled the water dragon to maneuver in a way that forced Yamato-sensei to retreat backwards towards that side. Just as Yamato was getting near the kunai, Haku used the water dragon to crash down towards him. Yamato quickly weaved some hand signs and said, wood-style grand pillars impaling jutsu. Before the water dragon could reach him, he destroyed the technique by creating multiple thick and giant wooden stakes from the ground and sent them piercing into the body of the water dragon. Although it would be nice if Sensei was a bit closer, this is as good as we're going to get, I thought to myself. I then activated the Flying Thunder God Jutsu while Sensei was still distracted by the destroyed water dragon. I quickly appeared at the spot of the red string kunai behind Sensei. Yamato noticed something amiss and looked around for Izaya only to discover him missing. I took this opportunity and dashed forward with kunai in hand as I cut the strings holding the bells in place by Sensei's waist. Crap! Yamato exclaimed in surprise. Before I could grab the bells I cut free, a small wooden hand protruded out from Sensei's waist and reclaimed the bells. Surprised by the unexpected development, I forced chakra into my feet and kicked with as much force as possible. The kick instantly broke the wooden hand that held the bells and flung them up into the air. Before anyone else could react, Haku formed a hand seal and said, wind-style severing blade jutsu. Then with a slicing motion he shot forth a powerful cutting wind blast and destroyed the bells in the air, turning them into broken ornaments. Ah! Yamato wanted to say something but ended up holding it in. Haku then stumbled and was about to fall into the water when Kimimaro quickly jumped over to grab him. Huff! 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 Haku continued to pant heavily in Kimimaro's arms. Are you all right, Haku? Kimimaro asked, concerned. He nodded his head and said with a heavy breath, "Mn. I just spent a bit too much chakra, Maro. Using the severing blade jutsu after the water dragon jutsu took more chakra than anticipated, but it'll be fine after a little rest." Kimimaro nodded his head and placed Haku on his back before saying, "You can go ahead and rest, Haku. I'll look after you." Mn. He nodded. I walked over to Haku and Kimimaro and placed my hands on both of their shoulders. You both did great. Haku, I apologize you had to use the severing blade jutsu. I was careless and didn't execute my part well enough. He shook his head and said, "No, big brother, it's not your fault. Sensei was just too skillful. And I only used up a little more chakra, it's no big deal." Yamato just silently stared at our banter for a bit before letting out a long and drawn-out sigh. And then he started laughing. Ha 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 ha. The three of us just gave a confused stare at Yamato-sensei before saying, "What's so funny, Sensei?" Sensei just continued to laugh for a bit longer before wiping a few tears from his eyes and said, "Sorry, I'm not laughing at you guys or anything. On the contrary, I'm laughing because I have such good students." Haha, in fact, I'm so elated I'm going to go brag to my senpai la. Eh. Ahem. Forget the last part. Anyways, I had already decided to let you three pass a while ago, I just wanted to see what skill level you guys were at. Honestly, I'm super impressed. In fact, I'm so impressed that I'm confused why you three didn't graduate earlier. Ah. It's because we wanted to spend more time with our friends and we weren't in a rush to graduate anyway. I answered. Yamato gave an inquisitive look but nodded and accepted the answer. Well, it doesn't matter. It's not like we'll force you to graduate early against your will. Yamato then walked over to us and placed his hands on my shoulder and Haku's shoulder since Kimimaro was carrying him. He smiled at us and said, "Congratulations. You all pass. Meet me here tomorrow at 10 a.m. so we can take our official Team 11 photo. For now you should all go rest. Especially you Haku. You used up quite a lot of chakra so recuperate well. MN." We all smiled and nodded. Okay. Yamato-sensei said. Dismissed. Chapter 11. The next day my alarm clock woke me up at 5 a.m. as per usual. I got up and did some stretches. Put on some loose exercise clothes and headed out for some light exercise. I did some basic shuriken and kunai throwing techniques as warm-up before increasing the difficulty. After throwing practice was taijutsu practice. I went through some basic movements before slowly increasing the difficulty again. During the past 4 years I had placed a few of my Flying Thunder God markings in some pretty inconspicuous spots and discovered an area where Rock Lee would perform his taijutsu training. Although Jiraiya calls spying on the ladies as research, I do actual research. In fact, most of the advanced techniques Haku, Kimimaro, and I learned are thanks to my 4 years of spying on others and then recording them down. It was pretty easy thanks to my Flying Thunder God Jutsu, my Sharingan, and my innate sensor type ability. Easy maneuverability, perfect copying ability, and easy to detect or escape detection. If I had these skills in my past life I wouldn't have been shot. After researching the taijutsu movements of not only Lee, but Neji and many others, I drafted my own unique taijutsu movements using the martial arts I learned of my past life which I called taijutsu wushu style and Shaolin style and taught them to Haku and Kimimaro. While it is useful to Haku and I, taijutsu would be the best suited for Kimimaro due to his physique and Kekkei Genkai. With Kimimaro's Kekkei Genkai he could produce extremely dangerous bone protrusions while performing advanced taijutsu movements and at the same time his bones are as hard as steel, therefore, the burden on his body isn't as great as a normal person's. I had hoped to record as much of the 8 inner gates taijutsu movements as I possibly could and transcribe them down for Kimimaro to practice. Since the 8 inner gates puts a great strain on one's body, especially the bones, Kimimaro's steel-like bones would be able to mitigate the stress on his body and allow him to be a truly unrivaled existence regarding taijutsu. Unfortunately I only ever had the chance to witness Lee perform the 8 inner gates twice in these past 4 years and he only ever activated the first gate. Anyways, it's no wonder Yamato-sensei was surprised yesterday at Kimimaro's display of taijutsu. After all, he practically studied all of Konoha's young martial arts geniuses' techniques albeit not directly. Yamato-sensei would have been even more surprised if Kimimaro had incorporated his Kekkei Genkai with his taijutsu. I hope we don't end up shocking Yamato-sensei to death. He was already super shocked yesterday at pretty much everything we did. In fact, even I was shocked to see Haku perform double single-hand weaving skills yesterday. He has truly been hiding some of his skills. Of course that's to be expected, after all, I'm not the only one working hard on improving myself. I continued practicing my taijutsu for another 45 minutes before taking a short rest. By now the sun had finally lit aglow the sky in a beautiful and peaceful orange-yellow hue signifying the start of day but still emphasizing how early it was. I activated the Flying Thunder God Jutsu and reappeared in my bedroom, showered and finished my morning daily cares as per usual. After getting dressed in my usual attire I checked the clock. 7 a.m. I have 3 hours left before we have to meet sensei. I sat down on my bed and began my morning meditation. Hee hee hee. Ha ha ha. Yamato chuckled softly to himself with a big smile. Kakashi looked up from his book as he stared dumbly at Yamato. You seem happy. What's with you today? Yamato was inwardly elated. He had waited all morning for his senpai to ask. Ha ha ha. Senpai, my precious students are what makes me happy. Hey. Your students. So you did the bell test then? Kakashi closed his book and focused his attention on Yamato. He nodded and said, Kakashi-senpai, I can see why Lord Third is so conscious of them and why he asked you to look out for them. They truly are very special. I indeed did the bell test like you had asked, although I wish I didn't. Kakashi raised his eyebrows in curiosity. How did it go? Yamato paused in silent contemplation for a moment before answering, I rank him as at least shonen level. Kakashi-senpai, you aren't going to believe just how skillful they are. Honestly, I thought I was going to die from all the shock they gave me. The bell test was unnecessary for those 3 kids. First, their teamwork was impeccable. I barely had time to breathe. They coordinated their attacks so well. Yamato proceeded to narrate the flow of the battle while Kakashi's facial expressions changed again and again at the critical points of the story. And that's how it ended. Anyways, they definitely pass. I have to meet him later at 10 so we can take a group photo. Yamato finished. Kakashi put on a look of contemplation. The image of Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura's bell test flashed through his mind before the imagery of what he imagined happened in Yamato's story flashed by. In his mind he couldn't really picture that those 3 kids had fought Yamato to such an extent. In the end he simply shook his head and continued reading his book before saying, well, since we passed both of our teams we'll have to go and accept some missions later today. Honestly, we're probably going to get some sort of mission retrieving a lost pet or cleaning up the trash. Yamato snickered and then placed a hand on Kakashi's shoulder and said in a slightly mocking tone, don't worry senpai, with you around no cat shall escape your grasp. He then smiled and laughed internally. Finally, for once I have the upper hand against Kakashi-senpai, Yamato joyfully exclaimed mentally. Kakashi just shook his head and let out a soft sigh at the prospect of cat hunting. I let out a slow and deep breath to relax my body as I finished my morning meditation. Turning to check the time, it was already 9:45 a.m. Slowly getting off my bed I double-checked to make sure I had everything. I grabbed a smooth box off my nightstand before walking out the door. Haku and Kimimaro were already waiting in the hallway for me so we could head to Training Ground 3 together. How are you feeling, Haku? I asked. I'm much better now after a night of rest. Thankfully there was a water source nearby for me to activate the water dragon jutsu, otherwise I wouldn't have had enough chakra to destroy the bells with my wind style. Haku replied. I nodded my head before turning to look at Kimimaro. What about you, Kimimaro? It's good that you didn't activate your Kekkei Genkai yesterday. You should keep that to a minimal as much as possible. In fact, it'd be best if you didn't activate your Kekkei Genkai at all until you get cured, but you did expend some chakra yesterday. No worries. I don't feel any different from before. I think you're right, as long as I keep my Kekkei Genkai usage to a minimal I think it'll slow down the deterioration of my health. I'll use the Taijutsu techniques you gave me more often instead. He replied. Okay. I nodded. However, you are forbidden from using the Wushu Style 8 Extreme Fists and the Wushu Style 3 Sovereign Hands. 1. Because they are incomplete techniques right now, and 2. Because they are too powerful. In your current condition you won't be able to handle the burden it puts on your body. Kimimaro nodded his head in agreement. MN. I understand. Alright, then let's go meet Yamato-sensei. Hopefully he isn't late today. I said as we headed over to Training Ground 3. We arrived exactly at 10 a.m. You're here on time today, sensei. Haku commented aloud. Ha ha ha, well I didn't want to keep my precious students waiting. Yamato said sheepishly. It's fine, sensei. We are used to it. Kimimaro said. Yamato gave a depressed look and secretly cursed Kakashi for making him late before. Ahem. He coughed. Anyways, let's first take our team photo. Yamato activated his wood-style technique to create a flat wooden pillar and placed a digital camera on top, setting it to timed picture mode. Alright, let's gather up over here, remember to smile. He said. I stood in the center with my hands straight down at my sides, an indifferent look on my face whilst Haku remained on my left. He tilted his head a bit, held his hands behind his back, and put on a warm comforting smile. Kimimaro stood to my right with his arms crossed and a straight face whilst Yamato-sensei stood behind us with a beaming smile and placed his hands atop of both Kimimaro's and Haku's head. Then, not a moment later with a white flash and the sound of a click, the first official photo of Team 11 was taken. "What now, Yamato-sensei?" Haku asked. We're going to the Hokage's office to receive our very first mission as a team," he replied. I wonder what kind of mission it will be," Kimimaro commented. "Well, since you guys just became genin, it will be either a D rank or a C rank mission. However, I have already related to Lord Third of your remarkable skills, so we may end up receiving a high-grade C rank mission instead," Yamato said. "As long as it isn't chasing down a cat," I mumbled. We arrived at the Hokage's office soon after. As we walked in, Team 7 walked out. We exchanged glances with Team 7 and noticed the indifferent yet slightly helpless look in their eyes. They probably got a mission to catch a cat or something, I mentally noted. As the door shut, we stood before Lord Third and a team of other administrators in charge of handing out missions. "Hey, Yamato, Haku, Kimimaro, Izaya, you've arrived at last," Hiruzen said with a look of contemplation. He focused specifically on the three of us for a few moments before nodding his head and took a look through the mission pile requests. Perhaps this one," he said as he pulled a request out of the mission pile. "This is a C rank mission, a high grade that entails tracking and hunting down the demon wolf known as Hanketsu. This mission does incur risk of injury and even death if not handled properly. I've listened and heard Yamato speak of the prowess you three have displayed and have contemplated for quite a long time what level of difficulty I should bestow upon Team 11. As you know, a genin can receive D or C rank missions, whereas chunin can receive B or C rank missions, and jonin are given tasks at B or A rank missions. Even S rank missions are not out of the range of possibility. I usually only give high-grade C rank missions to those that have achieved the rank of chunin, but I've decided to make an exception this once. Since this will be your first time on a mission as a team, I've chosen a high-grade C rank mission on the lower end, but still, a high-grade mission is still high-grade. If Team 11 agrees, then I will hand over the mission details." Yamato looked at his students, noting their unfazed reaction before turning back to Lord Third and said, "Team 11 respectfully accepts this mission." "MN. Very well. Then receive your mission," Hiruzen said. After Yamato received our mission, Team 11 prepared to leave except me. I remained standing in place. Is something the matter, Izaya-kun?" Hiruzen asked. Yamato and the others stopped by the door when they heard Lord Third speak out and noticed I didn't follow them. "Izaya, what's wrong?" Yamato asked. I shook my head and replied, "It's nothing, Yamato-sensei." I then turned my attention to Lord Third and said, "Lord Third, I wanted to show my gratitude to you for taking care of my brothers and I all these years and have prepared a gift. May I present it to you?" Hiruzen gave a surprised look. He then nodded and said with a smile, "Very well, I humbly accept." I walked over to Lord Third and respectfully presented him with the box that I grabbed from my room earlier this morning. After he took the box, I respectfully saluted him and said, "Then, I'll be off now, Lord Hokage." I then ran off to join my team. Yamato just gave a curious look before he led us off to our mission. Hiruzen opened the box curiously and saw a black necklace with a red crystal capsule attached that had the words Third Hokage inscribed on the outside. He mused. He decided to take it out and put it on before resuming his duties handing out missions. Chapter 12. Clink. Clank. TCH. TCH. Swish. Crack. Snap. Thud. Dust slowly rose into the air as a large and ferocious-looking beast collapsed onto the forest floor. A pool of blood spread beneath its fallen corpse as 3 young and 1 adult shinobi landed atop the tree branches nearby. They were exactly Izaya, Haku, Kimimaro, and Yamato. They stood there whilst staring down at the demonic beast that they had just slain. "All right, it's your turn this time, Kimimaro," Yamato said. "MN." Kimimaro nodded. He then jumped down to the fallen corpse and broke off the 4 giant horns from the beast as a show of proof that it had been hunted down and disposed of. I put my arms up and stretched before turning to Yamato-sensei and said, "So, are we going to set out for Konoha right after, or should we head back to the town and rest for a night first?" I think it'll be okay to take a break for the rest of the evening. Since we're near the border of fire country and the grasslands, it'll take us at least a week and a half to 2 weeks to get back to Konoha, so let's head back to town first and we'll set out for Konoha in the morning. Yamato replied. Then we should enjoy the hot springs they have in town. It's been a while since we just got to relax after all the missions we've been doing. Haku said. Kimimaro took out a simple storage-type sealing scroll and said, "Seal." His chakra flowed out from the scroll and surrounded the 4 giant horns before dragging them into the scroll. Yamato nodded his head in approval and commented, "Once we turn this in, that'll make 12 C-rank hunting missions of high grade complete." I nodded my head. After we completed the Hanketsu mission Lord Third gave us in less than 3 days, he elected to give us more difficult C-rank missions. Team 7 has probably just finished their mission to escort Tazuna the bridge builder back to the Land of Waves right about now, so that means it'll be about half a month before they get back to Konoha. I wonder if they fought Zabuza this time, and if they did, I wonder how it turned out. Yamato snapped me back out of my mental thoughts as he said, "Since Kimimaro is done, let's go back to town now." Just as we were about to leave, my eyebrows twitched and I turned around. Yamato noticed my strange action and said, "What's wrong, Izaya?" At that moment I furrowed my brow and said in a serious tone, "Yamato-sensei, Haku, Kimimaro, prepare yourselves. I sense something approaching us from the south. It's moving incredibly fast and the amount of chakra it has is substantial." Yamato also furrowed his brow and then said, "Formation A." We automatically separated, Yamato and Haku moving together on one branch, and Kimimaro and I moving together standing on another branch opposite them 5 meters away. We focused our attention in the southern direction as the unknown entity approached closer and closer at a rapid pace. The closer it got, the more alarmed I became. The chakra I sensed coming off of it became denser and more sinister the closer it got. "Everyone, be careful. I sense a sinister chakra coming off its body, it might be a powerful demonic beast." Just as I finished speaking, the entity finally came into view. A large, 3 meters 2-legged, winged creature with a long-beaked demonic face appeared. "A Tengu!" Yamato exclaimed. He then turned serious. Tengus are powerful demonic beasts that reside deep within mountains or forests, and some cultivate their strength by absorbing the blood of other demonic beasts or humans. There aren't many of them left in the world. To think that one would appear here and now of all places. It must have sensed our battle and come to reap the spoils, Yamato thought. At this moment the Tengu noticed the 4 humans standing atop the trees and hissed. It then unsheathed the long green-colored katana from its waist and held it firmly in its hand before rushing at an incredible speed at the 2 younger-looking humans. They were precisely Kimimaro and me. "Shit!" Yamato exclaimed. Facing a Tengu of this caliber was a B-rank mission at the very least. In the face of the Tengu's attack, Kimimaro and I remained calm. Recognizing the potential life-threatening situation we were put in, I decided that this Tengu was worthy of me showing some true skills. I immediately took out my Flying Thunder God kunai with a reverse grip and engaged the Tengu in a frontal confrontation. It swung downward towards my head whilst I parried upwards, deflecting its blade to the left momentarily. I kicked with my right leg straight at its abdomen, forcing it to flap its wings and dodge upwards. Just as it swung its blade sideways towards my neck, Yamato shouted, "Wood-style wood palm jutsu." A wooden palm emerged from the branch I was standing on, intercepting the blade. Kimimaro took this opportunity to jump upwards, reaching the same height level as the Tengu, and said, "Tajutsu Wushu-style Southern Movement Vicious Viper." His palm lit up with a green color as he struck out with a speed the Tengu couldn't follow and struck it straight in the chest, forcing the Tengu to release its hold on its blade and fly backwards 20 feet through the air before smashing into a tree. Krrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr Ah! It's tougher than I thought. Kimimaro narrowed his eyes in seriousness. Don't let it recover its weapon, Yamato said. I nodded in acknowledgement as I saw the wooden hand holding the green katana start to give off black smoke and deteriorate. The Tengu rushed back towards us as Yamato, Kimimaro, and Haku ran to confront it. Haku took out 3 senbon needles and infused his chakra in them, increasing their penetrative power. He then threw out 2 of them, one aimed at its forehead, the other aimed at its stomach. The Tengu dodged to its left, which prompted Haku to throw out his remaining needle at that moment, piercing through its right wing joint at the bend. The Tengu instantly lost control of its right wing and dropped to the ground. With anguish it forced chakra into its claws, increasing their length to a foot long, and ran at Haku. Yamato weaved his hands together for tiger, horse, tiger, snake and said, wood-style great forest jutsu. He then stuck out his right hand as multiple large tendrils of wood shot forth in an attempt to bind and restrain the Tengu. It merely snarled and forced its sinister chakra into its claws before slashing outwards, creating black wind that smashed apart Yamato's technique. Kimimaro weaved his hand signs and placed them on the ground before shouting, Earth-style bottomless swamp jutsu. The Tengu noticed something amiss and jumped in the air before it could be trapped in the swamp. Haku quickly formed the sign of ram and tiger and said, water-style syrup trap jutsu. He then spewed out a large murky color water from his mouth towards the airborne Tengu. Before it could get trapped, it formed chakra in its right and left hands and thrusted forward, creating a powerful enough wind that forced back Haku's technique to fall towards them instead. Yamato quickly placed his hands together and said, wood-style wood wall jutsu. The giant wall quickly rose from the ground, blocking Haku's technique. The Tengu took this opportunity to use the wall and kicked off the top, heading back for its blade. Seeing the Tengu rushing back, I silently cursed. The blade had been infused with sinister chakra, making it impossible for me to touch. I took my unique kunai and threw it towards the Tengu and formed the hand signs of ox, dog, dragon, rat, dog, boar, snake, tiger and said, kunai shadow clone jutsu. 100 kunai rained down at the Tengu, forcing it to momentarily pause and once more gather chakra with both hands before thrusting them out again. The powerful wind created from the thrust disrupted the rain of kunai, deflecting them towards the side. This however allowed Yamato, Kimimaro, and Haku to catch up. Yamato then shouted towards me, don't let it recover its weapon, it'll become much more powerful if it does. I nodded and shouted back, buy me some time. Haku jumped up on one of the tree branches and said, don't worry big brother, we'll keep it away, so focus on what you have to do. Yamato then formed the hand signs of tiger, hare, boar, and dog and said, earth-style earth wall jutsu. The giant wall appeared in front of the Tengu, effectively blocking it. Haku then formed the signs of dragon, tiger, and hare and said, water-style raging waves jutsu. The torrent of water then gushed outwards in a large arc above the Tengu. It only sneered at the pitifully weak technique and simply slashed out with its claws, tearing apart the water. Haku smirked and said, secret technique, 1,000 flying water needles of death. The water in the surrounding area immediately transformed into thousands of sharp pointy needles and flew directly at the Tengu. Alarmed and noticing it was in a precarious situation, it gathered a mass of chakra at its core and then bent its back, shouting outwards as it released a massive wave of air from the mass of chakra. Grr! Yamato grunted as the force of the wind not only destroyed the thousands of water needle, but pushed him, Kimimaro, and Haku backwards by 10 feet. The rock wall in front of it cracked and crumbled away. Before it could move from its spot, Yamato quickly placed his hands on the ground, shouting, wood-style woodvine jutsu. Thick branches of wood shot out from underneath the Tengu and wrapped around its ankles, preventing it from moving. Kimimaro quickly used this chance to close the distance and shouted, Taijutsu Wushu style Hua fists of striking 18 forms primary strike. The Tengu wanted to slash out with its claws, but the speed and power of Kimimaro's attack was too ferocious. He quickly struck out with his fists at both armpit areas of the Tengu before proceeding to strike under both ribs and then the bicep joints, the windpipe twice before landing a strike at the Tengu's center, and then repeated the cycle once more. The Tengu could only stand there as it lost strength in its limbs and body. After Kimimaro delivered the 18th strike, he shouted once more without losing momentum, Taijutsu Wushu style Hua fists of striking 18 forms secondary strike. He struck out and smashed the Tengu's head, armpits, inner thighs, inner elbow joints, hip joints, windpipe, sternum, inner ribs, and finally struck out with a series of powerful palm strikes at the center of the Tengu's chest. If before the Tengu felt the loss of strength over its physical body, then at this moment it felt as if its spirit left its body. At Kimimaro's last hand thrust, he had expelled all the chakra the Tengu could gather out of its body. Kimimaro, however, didn't stop there and once more shouted, Wushu style Hua fists of striking 12 forms moving road. He gathered the momentum into his arms and performed 12 incredibly powerful slashing motions as the Tengu took the beating, swaying whichever way Kimimaro bashed it until Kimimaro's last strike, in which he performed a quick spin, gathering chakra and all the kinetic energy from his earlier strikes into his palm and thrust outwards with both palms aimed at the Tengu's chest. The Tengu immediately felt its ribcage shatter and organs rupture as the force was so powerful its ankles ripped away from Yamato's wood vine jutsu as it flew through the air motionlessly, completely drained of strength. The light slowly faded from its eyes as it continued hitting, crashing, bumping, and falling until nothing but darkness filled its vision. Dead. It had died before it had come to a complete stop. Its dead body rolled around through the air like a pinball through the forest before finally dropping 500 meters away from its original spot. It was at this moment that I made my way over to Yamato, Kimimaro, and Haku holding the Tengu's katana in hand. We all immediately ran over to Kimimaro as he slightly swayed and stumbled a bit. I quickly grabbed onto him to keep him stable and lowered him to the ground, slowly letting him lean back on a tree. He coughed once as a little bit of blood flowed out. I furrowed my brow and focused my Sharingan through my blindfold to take a look at Kimimaro's body. I let out a sigh of relief as I noticed his internal damage wasn't too bad. It has been getting worse over the past couple months, but because he hasn't been using his Kekkei Genkai, his disease had slowed down considerably. How is he? Yamato asked. Just a minor internal injury from overexerting his physical body. He'll be fine after a night's rest, I replied. After all the missions and time we spent together, we had already told Yamato-sensei of Kimimaro's condition, so he wasn't surprised by this development. All of us could only try to ensure that Kimimaro kept his involvement in fights to a minimum, for now at least. Haku breathed out a sigh of relief when he heard me give my diagnosis. Here, brother Maro, let me help you, Haku said as he took out a cloth and wiped off Kimimaro's blood. Yamato noticed the green katana in my hands as I deactivated the kunai shadow clone technique and picked up my original kunai. Were you successful in sealing away its evil energy? Yamato asked. I nodded and said, yes, sensei. I put my kunai away and pulled out a purple scroll, which I handed both the katana and scroll to Yamato. Sensei, I sealed away the evil energy into this scroll. As for the katana, I'm not really sure what to do with it, so it's probably best that you hold onto it. MN. Alright. Good job, Izaya. You too, Haku, Kimimaro, Yamato praised. We walked over to where the Tengu's corpse was and found nothing left of it except for its long black beak. Yamato gave out a long sigh of relief and said, looks like Kimimaro's attack indeed finished it off. Its body filled with evil and resentful energy corroded its physical form and caused it to crumble away. Initially I thought it was one of the old and ancient Tengus that was left in the world, but luckily this one wasn't one of them. Haku looked up at Yamato in curiosity and said, Sensei, are the ancient Tengus very powerful? Well, first off, there's really only 5 known ancient Tengu living in the world and only 3 of them boast actual power. The other 2 are more of scholars. Anyways, they normally just stick to their abode and don't come out at all. Other than the 2 scholarly Tengus, the 3 powerful ones have a bounty on their heads and anyone who kills them can claim a hefty reward. I'm willing to bet someone has put in a request to hunt down this rogue Tengu as well. I'll hold on to the katana for now as proof of its death and report back to Lord Third on this matter. Maybe we can claim a reward. Okay you guys, let's head back to town. I want to make sure Kimimaro gets some rest and I want to soak in the hot springs, I said. MN. Me too, Haku replied.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like this video if you want some more what if video. Comment 3 hearts for more what if.